the longest title in the long-running Mission Impossible series. This is the seventh film that gets back our team led by Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt, leader of the Impossible Missions Force, who once again has to rally the team to stop a thing from destroying the world. In this iteration of the movie, there is this AI that this super intelligent has possibly become self-aware and has gone rogue at itself, as everything in these films do. Everyone goes rogue. And so there is a race to control it. There are several parties involved, including the IMF, MI6, CIA, outside buyers, all vying for control of the AI. And it's controlled through these two keys that interlock and open a thing and control it. And that's our base setup. And we, like I said, we have a lot of people involved. It gets a little confusing. We have returning Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, Vanessa Kirby. They were all on the previous one. And newcomers, Haley Atwell, Pom Clementieff, who, of course, we know from Guardians of the Galaxy, and the great Henry Czerny, who was in the 1996 original Mission Impossible film, who played CIA director Kittredge. He is back in that same role and somehow looks exactly the same. So they really aged him up in that earlier movie and have probably aged him down a little bit. There's a ton of action. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of how's he going to get out of this situation. It's very long, as it's 2 hours 45 minutes. That's our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
So I am not the biggest Mission Impossible fan. I should say that up front. And I know that this series has like a rich lore, like full of characters and motivations and plot lines that typically when you watch one of these movies is not really required reading. Like you don't have to do a lot of homework to go see Mission Impossible 7. Thank God, right? Like I think that's kind of the best way to get into one of these movies, because what you want to focus on is the action and the excitement and the charisma that Cruise and the rest of the cast are bringing. And all of those things work great. But boy, this is a full script for like a 2 hour 45 minute feature. There's a lot of details and there's a lot of people that are mentioned and motivations, and they talk about the bad guy, the entity, and the IMF and the organizations. And it's a mire, man. Like I really got caught up in it. And for some of those longer dialogue sequences, I was a little bored, but I quickly hopped on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes when I got home, realized the movie has a robust 98% from 198 critics, which means I'm wrong. It's definitely a good movie. And I've been surprised at how many people like really are into it. Like it seems to be a hit critically.
I feel like like Indiana Jones or Transformers or a lot of these things, if you're a fan of the franchise, you're going to be happy with it. If you're not big on these big action films, you may not be as into it. But these films work really well. I actually, but to get ready for this, I rewatched the original Mission Impossible, the 1996 one, and Mission Impossible 6 Fallout, which was the most recent iteration that Henry Cavill was in. And there's a lot. There's the lore sometimes is more or less, but they all have a lot kind of that's similar. You know, there's a ton of action. There is an indecipherable plot. The plots are always so overly complicated. Like I'm watching 7 or 6, which I've seen more like a couple of times. No idea what's going on. No idea what Henry Cavill's up to. Same thing with the first one. And the plot through this is super kind of thick and overly complicated. There's a ton of people. There's so many people in this movie, which doesn't help because that cuts down on screen time for everyone.
Yeah, it's strange. Like I wouldn't identify, because a lot of these movies have this problem now. Yeah, like they're a little too complex. There's too many characters. And I wouldn't identify those as like successful features of the franchise. I would think those would be like, you know, things that would kind of get snipped and trimmed over time. But no, like director Christopher McQuarrie seems to just come right back to it every time. Even more so in this movie. Visually, this shares a lot of stylistic choices with the original film. Lots of Dutch angles, which I'm so not into. I can't do it. I've complained about this before. Ron Howard's The Grinch, the Jim Carrey live action Grinch, is all Dutch angles, that whole movie. Ron Howard very explicitly was like, I wanted it to feel unique and different for kids who watch it. And it makes my brain light on fire, like watching a whole movie where the camera's cocked to one side or the other. And this movie does it a lot. It's not all the time, thank God, that you can watch the trailer and realize that there's a lot more going on than just that. But between that and also like bouncing around in conversations is weird. Like there's supposed to be this kind of invisible line you don't cross on set whenever you're filming a conversation between two actors for visual distinction and clarity. Most films follow this. This movie does not. They just break that rule. They walk right across it. The camera will bounce from the left of Ving Rhames to the right in the same conversation. It'll move all around Tom Cruise. I don't get it. It takes a long time to film it that way. I don't understand why they did it. Nobody will care because nobody's going to notice. But man, just a weird decision that I think is supposed to be like the older ones that I don't recall. Great tribute, not for me though.
Yeah, this movie gets a little bit more into the cloak and dagger style of spy films when there's like, shifting alliances. You don't know who's who or who's working for whom. There's constantly this whole thing with the buyer or a secret buyer. This time embodied by Vanessa Kirby's character, the White Widow. She played the same character in the previous film, whose motivations are who knows what, but she has one piece, or she's a broker of information or intelligence or something, and there's always someone buying something and someone arranging it to be bought. But it gets confusing, the motivations of the various parties. I think there's like 5 or 6 people or parties interested in this thing that they're chasing, this key. And it just kind of gets confusing about what they're all doing and who's working with who, because sometimes they have, similar interests and will align, but it shifts and it changes. And you can't keep it straight. Like I need a diagram like while I'm watching the movie.
Let's start with the action, because those are I think the sequences that people remember these films most for. I can feel like I can confidently say Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 does not feature the best action of the franchise. It's fine. It's definitely better than some of the early ones. But nothing that really particularly stands out. The big thing they've been touting in the marketing, of course, is Tom Cruise jumping a motorcycle off of a side of a mountain out in the Austrian Alps. I guess you've probably seen that in ads. Additionally, there's some stuff going on with the train. And there's like one other real big action sequence, and I'd say that pretty much tightens up your 3 large set pieces, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Overall, good, I think. Overall, good. At least I should say I really did like this car sequence in Rome at the end of Act 1. Like, I think it's Rome. Rock solid. Lots of movement, tangible motion. Probably the best car sequence I've seen all year. The other one's fine. I just wish I hadn't seen him promoted so damn much. God, I feel like I saw that Tom Cruise jumping that motorcycle a million times before I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, and it wasn't near as cool as the big stunt in the previous movie was the halo jump, the high altitude jump out of the plane. And that's amazing because there's a whole acting scene with him and Henry Cavill at the beginning, and then he just walks out of the plane and you're like, where's the cameraman? The cameraman had to do it too.
Right.
That's a super cool stunt. The stunts from Top Gun Maverick as well, really breathtaking. They're better than most movies do. They're better than Indiana Jones. Not as good as they've been in past films. I feel like in Fallout or in Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, they've been a lot better. Car chase scene is really good. Again, that's better than any car chase scene done this year. And one of the things I appreciate about this franchise is that they use a lot of practical effects when they can. I mean, they're shooting on location in these cities. They're crashing cars. They're breaking stuff. They're on real trains and planes. There's a big sequence at an airport in this movie. They're at an airport. So it really grounds it to just get on location and use practical effects.
Yeah, this is something I complained about in our Transformers Rise of the Beast review. Michael Bay knows how important it is to film physical action, like Mission Impossible does, like Christopher McQuarrie does, right? Film practical stuff, and then you enhance it with CGI and visual effects. But now, like, Transformers is moving in a direction where it's like, you're not really going to do that. You're going to have, like, one kind of car chase scene, and the rest of it will be digital transformers, right? They'll just CGI the rest of it in. Mission Impossible, like, lovingly does not do that, and I think that's really important. There's definitely CGI in places, right? Of course, you can't avoid it, but it feels very kinetic, like it feels very practical. I think that stuff's important. Like, Tom Cruise still runs. Like, Tom Cruise is always running these movies, you know? Like, he's running. I'm like, he's going places.
He's got the best cardio of any actor.
That's right. Insane. He's got the best thetans. He's got it all together. And, like, I think that's good. I also think this makes for a fine off-script double feature with Indiana Jones, because both franchises feature, you know, lead actors who are getting older. And one of the problems with Indiana Jones is Indiana Jones is not the same character he used to be. He used to be this, you know, stud, Chad, maverick, like could do anything. Right now, he's older and crotchety, and he doesn't have it anymore. And watching an Indiana Jones movie without that central energy, without that lightning bolt of a character in the middle, can be a bit of a slog. I think Tom Cruise still has it. I do. Like, as Ethan Hunt, I think he's still exciting. But as somebody who's not a big fan of these movies and just kind of goes and sees the offhanded one whenever it's out, I think it's wise that they start wrapping these up, right? Like, they can't do many more Tom Cruise Mission Impossibles. And I think maybe moving in a direction where James Bond is headed, where you start talking about recasting, hey, where's the series going to go in a few years? Probably smart. And I think Dead Reckoning is supposed to be that, right? This is supposed to be kind of the beginning of the end, maybe. Probably.
I mean,
not.
he talked about doing these until he's 80.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you give him an administrative role where he's like the guy at command directing people, and you have someone else doing all the stunts. Well, let's talk about our cast. We have a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones. So let's start with our returning cast. Ving Rhames somehow still in this series after he was of course famously in the first Mission Impossible, was not in 2 or 3 or 4, I don't think, and then they brought him back for not Dead Reckoning, Rogue Nation, and he's been in the last 3, but he does less and less in these films, and he kind of wears this dumb hat that gets tilted more and more in every movie.
Yeah, I listen. Ving Rhames is a fine actor. All right, I shouldn't be cruel. But my man does like 5 projects a year, and 4 of them are basically junk. And then he'll do a Mission Impossible movie, and every time he has like 1 costume change, and he's barely on set. And I'm like, why is he still in these movies? Like, how does Emilio Estevez get killed off in the very first one, in the prime of his career? Like, and Ving Rhames, who's not doing anything exciting, is still like a core foundational piece of the Mission Impossible movies. Like, if there's anybody you could ice on screen to like raise the stakes and really scare Ethan Hunt into realizing how serious this is, you blow up Ving Rhames, and like he's still kicking. I don't get it. Like, Simon Pegg
type on computers.
Yeah, like and then somebody says abort the mission, and he closes his laptops frustratedly and stands up, and then they just move him to. Then he goes to his trailer. Like that's the day for Ving Rhames. Like it's fine. Simon Pegg's got a bit more to do back as Benji. Vanessa Kirby is exciting. Haley Atwell, newcomer, is surprisingly fun. You've seen her most recently in the Captain America franchise, right? Like she's Peggy Carter. That's her thing.
That's her claim to fame. Yeah. Yes. I mean, Marvel.
Yes, in this she plays functionally a pickpocket who kind of gets tangled up in Ethan Hunt's world, and before she knows it, can't get out. And of course, you have Tom Cruise as Ethan. Overall, fine. Like, good charisma. Everybody's got good delivery, even if sometimes they're saying lines like, "We have to get the card back from the entity before Gabriel arrives," or something like just the cheesiest cheeseball lines you've ever heard. Sounds like it fell right out of an action sitcom, which really is where Mission Impossible came from.
They started, they refer to the AI as the entity, and it's kind of eye-rolling when they say it. Cast is good. Haley Atwell is definitely being set up to continue to be part of this series, I think. I read somewhere that she had like a 2-hour audition that was all like stunt choreography, basically. And she plays a major role in this film, which I'm kind of surprised at because it's her first one. Rebecca Ferguson is also back. Love her character. She was first appeared in Rogue Nation. She's been in the last 2. And like I said, some of our returning Henry Czerny from the original back is still kind of conniving CIA director, and Cary Elwes making a surprise appearance as the CIA director. Like I said, everyone's just like a director of this agency or that. It was previously Alec Baldwin's character, but he died in the last movie.
Bummer.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
Sorry.
rats. Yeah. No. Overall, like as somebody who does not really hang out in the Mission Impossible space, like I think I had a fun time watching this movie, albeit just a little complicated. It's weird to get on the internet after and see it being praised for that, because that's what a lot of these movies do, and the people that see them like them for that. It feels like it's like I never saw a James Bond movie, and then I go see one, and I'm like, God, this is all real cloak and dagger serious. And people are like, yeah, that's what we want. And like, I've seen Mission Impossible movies. I've just never seen these as like a feature. I've seen this as a bug, but it seems that it's here to stay, and people like it. And as far as I know, if you like Mission Impossible, you're gonna like this movie.
Yeah, I think so too. And I wanted to mention that the one of the themes about the movie, which is they're very weak, but it's this whole AI thing they talk about. You know, if you control the AI, then you can control truth and then the narrative. And there's this part where like they've created offices that are completely analog, no internet, no digital. This to be kind of free of it. And there's a great sequence where this super intelligence is like interrupts their comms and starts copying everyone's voices and giving them misdirection. So the movie kind of tries to touch on these themes of like the dangers of artificial intelligence and kind of its place, but it doesn't get into it it just like scratches the surface.
One more question before we move on to recommendations and then Nimona. This is part one of a part two, right? Like, and that's worth mentioning because this has never happened in a Mission Impossible franchise. What do you think, Andy? How's it handle it? Is it underpaced because it has to set up for a part two that's supposed to be bigger and more bombastic? Does it feel maybe too full at 2 hours 43 minutes? Where are we at?
Wah, wah. So I compared this to Spider-Verse, which Across the Spider-Verse ends on a cliffhanger. And I remember being so excited at the end of that. I just wanted to see another hour of it. And I was super excited for the sequel to come. It's very like Empire Strikes Back. But Dead Reckoning is just, it kind of ends and I'm like, oh, I guess there's another one, but there's some loose ends, but it's not exactly a cliffhanger. It's not exactly super exciting for like what's coming next. You're just like, oh, it's unfinished.
Yeah, I would have rather it kind of wrapped as an adventure and left just a bit of a thread that the second one would tug on, and instead it feels very boldly like one half of a bookend set. You know what I mean? Like, here's a full featured something, but it's lacking a satisfaction at the end because it has to set up for part two. For what it's worth, credit where it's due to Paramount and Mission Impossible for at least putting part one on the posters and trailers. Dune didn't do that. Spider-Verse didn't really do it. And people still came out of those theaters surprised, like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a part one. I thought this was going to be a whole thing. Like, they at least told you in marketing it's part one. In fact, the film ends in its title card. It says end part one. which is hilarious. They just give it right to you. You're coming back for more, baby, and for better or worse, that's Mission Impossible 7. Andy, any other thoughts or recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1?
Yeah, I would, especially if you're a fan of the Mission Impossible series. You're getting a lot more of the things that they do really well, getting fun characters, big action set pieces, which are really convincing and really, dangerous. It's a little long at 2 hours 45 minutes. It's nearly 3 hours long. It'll be a long night at the cinema. The plot is super complicated. I don't know why they make them so complicated because we just really care about the action. But they are for whatever reason. It's a good time at the movies, and if you happen to have skipped Indiana Jones, this is kind of the action movie to see.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. You could wait to stream this just fine, but it really does play best in a theater, like on the big screen, with a good sound system too. I should say, good sound design in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Guns sound real punchy, like cars sound real loud. You know what I mean? Like it roars at you, and I think that's good. That's what you want in these movies. Like, you don't want to have to get too mired in the complicated. And like I told Andy when we were talking about this yesterday, it would be easy for these movies to just pull the Fast X thing, right? Ethan Hunt and Fred's could be like, "Oh, the agency called. We got another mission." Like, and that's just the setup for the movie. Like, just the most lazy conveyor belt like approach. And at least like, although it seems to roll through the same treads over and over, Ethan Hunt becomes rogue. Like, he's got to go do his own thing. It seems exciting enough that like Ethan comes off more as a veteran of a tired system and less like a tired part of an old system. That doesn't make any sense. But the point is, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, not a bad feature. Would recommend. And with that, we should move into our final review of the episode. We don't normally do 3, and lately we've been doing 3s first because we got big movies coming out at the movies and on Netflix, which is where our next feature is. I'm excited to talk about this. Initially, we hadn't planned on it, but Andy had pitched it to me and said, hey, maybe we should watch this while I was up in Michigan for the 4th. My partner Christine had watched it, and she was super stoked about it, so we got back into town, quickly watched it. The movie is Nimona.